Hi everyone, this is Scott Reaves and this is FSN 329, and this is going to be part one of a couple videos on vitamin A and the carotenoids. So this first one's going to be relatively short, a little bit of introduction and some of the naming of the molecules that are involved. So let's start here. So vitamin A has several different types or kind of flavors. So we're going to look at some of the specific types of vitamin A, but we'll see that quite a few different molecules have vitamin A function, and some of these molecules can actually interconvert. So vitamin A is kind of a family of fat-soluble dietary compounds. And for example, retinol is one of the most active or usable forms of vitamin A, and it's found in animal foods such as liver and eggs and in some fortified food products. Retinol is often called preformed vitamin A. And we'll see that the other forms of vitamin A, their activity is based on relative to retinol. So retinol can be converted to retinal and retinoic acid. These are other forms of vitamin A that also have specific functions. Now, some plant foods contain darkly colored pigments called provitamin A carotenoids, and they can be converted to vitamin A. And in the U.S., approximately 30% of the vitamin A consumed by men and women is actually provided by carotenoids. These are called provitamin A because they're before they become vitamin A, but they do have functions. Now, the history behind vitamin A is foods containing vitamin A have long been prescribed to cure night blindness. So, for example, ancient Egyptian physicians recommended the consumption of ox or chicken livers for people unable to see at night. And so I think if you think about that, we know right away that a good storage form of vitamin A or location is actually in the liver. And so we also know that vitamin A is important in the vision cycle. So this goes back long time in history, but in the 1920s, Osborne and Mendel at Yale and McCullum's group at Wisconsin identified a substance in cod liver oil, egg yolk, and butterfat that actually cured night blindness. And it was also essential for growth, so they called it fat-soluble A. Investigators later found that some plants contain compounds with vitamin A activity, so we know those are the carotenoids, right? So vitamin A is important for lots of functions in the body. It's important in vision. It's important for bone growth. It's important for reproduction, for cell division and cell differentiation. So remember, that's the process when a cell kind of decides or determines what it's going to eventually become, how it's going to become specialized. Well, vitamin A is involved in that, and most of that is actually through vitamin A's regulation of gene expression, right? Vitamin A helps maintain the surface linings of the eyes and the respiratory, urinary, and intestinal tracts. And so when those linings break down, for example, in a vitamin A deficiency, then bacteria can enter the body and actually cause infection. So vitamin A helps protect against bacterial infection. But if there is an infection, vitamin A also helps maintain the immune system. It helps regulate the immune system. So it's important in kind of both aspects of protecting us. And there's lots of other things that vitamin A does. And the carotenoids you've probably heard of. Probably the most famous carotenoid is beta-carotene, and it serves as an antioxidant. So in lab tests, the carotenoids are powerful antioxidants. Now, exactly how they function in the body and how effective they are is still kind of up for debate and kind of the focus of quite a few experiments. So let's see. The retinoids are essential to the diet, and the parent compound of these is all-trans-retinol, and it's also known as preformed vitamin A. The carotenoids are not considered essential. We don't have to have the carotenoids in our diet. Now, they are beneficial, it's believed, not only because of their potential antioxidant capability, but also because they can be converted to vitamin A, or some of them can be. And some of the more famous carotenoids are beta-carotene, lutein, lycopene, and there are a few others. Now some, but not all, can be converted to retinoids. So they also are considered to have health-promoting properties, though. And there are approximately 600 carotenoids in nature, but only about 50 of them have vitamin A activity. And I mentioned this before, but in the U.S., that can be a considerable amount of a vitamin A's intake. Person's vitamin A intake can actually come from the carotenoids. So let's look at these real quick. Here's some of the structures. We have top left, we have all-trans retinol, and one of the key features of this is over here on the right-hand side of this, in that chemical group in the blue, there's your retinol group. So there's the alcohol group, the OH, that gives all-trans retinol its name. And you can see it has basically a ring structure here with 3 methyl groups, and then it has this carbon tail that also has methyl groups. Okay, so there's all-trans retinol. Look over to the right of that. Here's retinal. And retinal has an aldehyde group we see here. That's the only difference. And if we look over here, just a little bit down the left side here, we have retinoic acid. Retinoic acid, its differentiating chemical group is a carboxylic acid group right here. The rest of the molecules should be the same. Actually, there's a typo here. That should be a methyl group. Sorry about that. Then we have retinol ester. Retinol ester is when a fatty acid is attached through the hydroxyl group of retinol. Right? So that's an ester bond. So we call that retinol ester. And a typical fatty acid, there's palmitate, and I'll talk more about that later, but this is a common storage form of the retinoids, is a retinol ester, and it's commonly retinol palmitate. But that's how we get some of it in our foods, a lot of it in our foods, and then also how it's stored in the body. We look at the next molecules a little bit farther down. We have beta-carotene that's shown here. And beta-carotene is, you can see the ends of it look kind of the same, don't they, as these retinoids. And yet it has a long chain in between these two ring structures. And that's no coincidence that beta-carotene looks this way, because there's an enzyme that'll actually cleave this in half. And when it does that, you can actually get 2 retinol molecules from it. Okay? Then we have alpha-carotene here, which looks similar. And again, this can be converted to give us some retinoids. And then down at the bottom, we have beta-cryptoxanthin, which can also be converted to retinoids. So everything on this page already is or can be converted to retinoids and has vitamin A activity. And we also know that, for example, beta-carotene also has antioxidant activity as well. Now, let's look at the next one here. This slide shows the top 3 are other carotenoids. This is lycopene, canthaxanthin, lutein, and then the bottom is retinol palmitate. Right? We know that the bottom one is a retinoid. The other 3 are carotenoids, and they do not have vitamin A activity, but they may be beneficial. For example, the red color of lycopene is kind of makes it a very interesting molecule. So it's a carotenoid, but it's red. I think a lot of times we think of carotenoids as being yellow or orange, but some of them are actually red. Now in vitro, so in lab tests, lycopene is actually the strongest antioxidant of all the carotenoids, and it's either even a better antioxidant than vitamin E. It has the highest concentrations in tissues compared to all the other carotenoids. And there's good food sources of lycopene. For example, the best source would be tomatoes, for example. And in this case, a food product that's processed or cooked actually provides more of the molecule than it does if it's raw. So for example, for tomatoes, if they're processed, like even in a tomato paste products, there's a lot more lycopene that's available than there is if it's raw. So some studies protect that lycopene has protective effects against certain types of cancer. So some evidence has suggested that. It's not completely conclusive, but overall it's thought lycopene may be beneficial. Canthaxanthin, the center one, doesn't have vitamin A activity. And then lutein down at the bottom, Doesn't have retinoid activity, but it's also an antioxidant. So some studies suggest it may be protective against macular degeneration. And the macula is a portion of the eye that's in the back part of the eye that actually is sometimes susceptible to degeneration with age, or sometimes UV light can affect the macula, and that can cause the person to basically lose a wide field of vision, and it can actually progressively become more centralized, so the person has difficulty seeing. So what's interesting is lutein is found in higher levels in the eye than anywhere else. So it's thought that it might be there to serve a protective role. Now, it tends to inhibit oxidation of cell membranes, so it may reduce the UV-induced eye damage that's sometimes involved in macular degeneration. Okay, so let's see. And they used to see a lot more promotional material about lutein. They used to have it in lots of eye formulas and so on, but some of the recent studies have kind of questioned its overall effectiveness. So the jury's still out on lutein, but if you do see that related to eyes, that's one of the reasons they do sell it as a supplement for the eyes, is because it's in higher levels in the eyes than anywhere else. Next one. Now here's this is a kind of a better diagram about the interconversions of these guys. Now there's different forms of vitamin A and their conversions, for example, and these structures all look right, I think. Looks like it. For example, retinol, there's our alcohol group right here, and the chemical groups in this case are highlighted in white. Here's retinal, here's our aldehyde, and here's retinoic acid, carboxylic acid group. So you want to be able to identify these. And remember, these are the retinoids up here. And we have beta-carotene. This is a precursor, or a provitamin A form. And remember, cleavage at this point can actually yield 2 molecules of vitamin A. We have an enzyme, and this is written on another slide down the road. The enzyme is called 15 prime carotenoid dioxygenase. 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 That enzyme will cleave beta-carotene right here and give you 2 retinal molecules. And then, so basically it can provide kind of 2 molecules of vitamin A, a retinoid. Now, again, retinoids are more common in animal products. Carotenoids are more common in plant products. And if we look down at the bottom, for example, we see in foods, most common form of vitamin A is going to be the retinol esters. Remember, this is retinol with a fatty acid attached. So when that fatty acid is cleaved, you get retinol. And one of the important functions of retinol is it supports reproduction. So it's really important for reproduction in animals. Okay, now retinol can convert to retinal in the body, and they can interconvert, right? So the retinol, if it's oxidized, becomes retinal. Retinal, if it's reduced, becomes retinol. So they go back and forth. Retinal has specific functions in vision. Retinal can become retinoic acid. Retinoic acid is really important for regulating growth. Retinoic acid has a key role in regulating gene expression. Okay? And we'll talk about that more. And we can see that that's a unidirectional reaction. In other words, once these retinoids become retinoic acid, they don't revert. And the classic study for this was when they had a animal study in rats. They fed rats the different types of retinoids. So one group had retinal, another group had retinoic acid, and the group with retinoic acid developed normally, except they became blind because they had enough to perform enough. The retinoic acid could perform many of the important functions of vitamin A, but it couldn't participate in the vision cycle that we'll talk about. Beta-carotene is in plant foods, and this is one of the carotenoids it's showing, but beta-carotene, you can see here, converts to retinal. and then it can become the other retinoids. So beta carotene can be a source of any of these retinoids, so it can be an important part of the diet because of that. Okay. I think we'll pick this up in the next program. So that's it for part 1. I'm going to stop right there. Hope that went okay. Hope you can hear it. And that'll conclude this right there.